Coming. Thanks for being our prayer support and just support in so many ways. We really appreciate it. And Billy was like a mom to me, and the two of us were like a mom to Dallas.
Yes.
And we just had a really good time getting to know one another better. So anyway, I have 16 pictures here to show, and mostly they're farm pictures because Billy and I weren't together a lot because my mission was to help with the dairy goats and get that started, and her mission was more in the schools. And there was some overlap, but mostly I was taking pictures of the farm and not of schools. So CSI, Christ Sanctuary International, has established schools and churches in the Kampala area, and they have a 180-acre farm that is north of Kampala in an area called Luwero, and that's mostly where I was. And I can't really tell you the distance between the two because the roads are so horrible in Uganda that it can be from here to North Powder and it can take you 2 hours. So Luwero is about 2 hours north of Kampala. I don't know distance. But anyway, this is Pastors Tucker and Irene. They pretty much founded CSI, and they have both been here to the States visiting. I didn't meet them when they were here, but Dallas and her family have met them, and so they've known Dallas for quite a few years. And finally, Dallas got to go and be there with them, and they were just so thrilled. And they just embraced her, and they're kind of like her Ugandan parents. So Dallas wanted to come with Billy and I to Uganda for a month, and then she was going to stay and meet up with a church group that's going to go to Kenya next Sunday. And the plan was that she would be with us in Uganda for the first month, and then we would escort her to Kenya and make sure that she was ensconced there before we left, and then she would just kind of hang out for 3 weeks in Kenya and then meet up with the church group. Well, it didn't work out that way. She actually is still in Uganda today under the parenting of Tucker and Irene. They are thrilled, she is thrilled, and she'll go sometime the following week, not this coming week, but the following week, she'll go on to Kenya. So Tucker and Irene are such wonderful people, so supportive. Tucker is such a visionary for the whole ministry. He may not know how to do something, but he invites experts in the field to come, and whatever they want to give to the ministry, he'll say, yes, come, I'll figure out what we need to do to get it done. And so he doesn't know anything about dairy goats. But he said, if you want to come and help us get dairy goats started, we'll do that. And so he lets you come and he lets you share your vision and share what you know, and then he equips you, he gets you connected with the right people and the right things. So that's what happened. I was there for a month, and things really weren't happening that you could see for the first 2 weeks, but there were things happening underneath, and we were praying. He's a man of prayer. This is the farm manager, Alan, and he pretty much stays on the farm. He lives on the farm. There's a house there, and this is the shirt that I took to him. So he's proudly displaying it there. Very godly man. All of these people involved in CSI are so godly. It's inspiring. And every Sunday we would go to church and worship with them, and they are just dancing and singing, and their church services start maybe around 9 o'clock or so, and they get around maybe 1 o'clock or so. Or so. And it's not like you're looking at your watch saying, I'm hungry, let's go. I mean, they spend the first hour or so just praising the Lord. I mean, everyone's praising the Lord. It's not just someone in the front is praising the Lord and everybody else is sleeping. It's everyone is praising the Lord. They're walking around, they're entreating the Lord, and they're getting their spirits right. And then it kind of evolves into singing, and then everyone's singing and dancing and praising the Lord. And then finally they have a message to share. And because we were the outsiders that came from the other side of the world, they're like, okay, God has brought you this far. What message do you have for us? And we're like, I don't have a prepared sermon. And it's like, it's okay. Just share a scripture, share what God's doing, share the vision for what you want to do here, whatever God puts on your heart. We expect you to share, so get up and share. And so we did, like 5 minutes or so we would share, and God would just move. And on one of the church services I went to, my heart was heavy because there was someone back here in town who was dying, who didn't know the Lord. And my heart was so heavy, and so when they asked me to share, I just got up and I just said, there's this person who doesn't know the Lord and she's dying, would you please pray with me? And you wouldn't believe people halfway around the world, that Ugandan congregation prayed for her, and they understood that she needed salvation. So the one who was leading said, okay, let's pray. And I expected the person leading to lead a prayer and everybody would agree. No, it's not like that in Ugandan church at all. Just that she says, let's pray. And then they all started praying their own prayers to God for this person that I had shared with them about. And it was so touching. So services are a lot different. And most of these guys, like Alan here, he might actually be a pastor or very close to being a pastor. When they bring people into the Ugandan church, those that want to can go through a 3-year discipleship training program, and at the end of that, they're free to be pastors or whatever. And it's not just the men, it's the women. And a lot of times the women take the lead, and they are the ones that want to minister to the people first, and they don't put any restrictions on it. If you want to be a woman pastor, be a woman pastor. And like with Tucker and Irene, they are both pastors, and when we would get up and share in front of them, a lot of the people don't understand English, or they're not very fluent in English, although it's a trade language. So like if Pastor Tucker would share in English, Irene would translate for him. He would say a line, then she would say it in Ugandan, or vice versa. If he would say it in Ugandan, she'd translate into English. And so when we got up to share, we would say it in English, and whoever was there would translate so that the whole congregation could understand. This is the preliminary stages of working on the goat shelter. In Uganda, it gets really rainy and wet, and so they have to build things up off the ground, and you can't put a post into the ground because the termites will get it and it will rot, and it will only last for about a year. So what they do is they build these brick columns, and then they set the post in the top of the brick column with cement. So that's what we were doing first. We were digging the holes for the brick columns. And we had 3 Ugandan men working on it. The foreman was Joseph, and I tell you, those Ugandans can work. They don't wear a hat. They're out there in the sun working, and they're not drinking tons of water like Dallas and I were. And they didn't wear sunscreen, and they didn't have to. And they are strong. They work all day long. Dallas and I would work like, one of us would work 15 minutes and then hand the shovel to the other, and we'd go cool off, and the other one would work. And so we were sweating, but they were just really good at it. It's not the most glorifying shot of my rear end, but there's Dallas with Joseph, the foreman. When Joseph figured out that we were actually serious about getting in and muscling, we weren't just going to stand around and say, oh, good job, guys. We actually wanted to get in and work. When he saw that we were really willing to work, he put us to work. And so Dallas is actually building a tool here. These guys don't bring their trucks with their tools. They come in on a motorcycle, and if they need a tool, maybe there's some tools on the farm. We had some shovels and stuff, and a tractor, which you'll see later. But if they need a tool, they pretty much build it on the spot. So the tool that he's building here is actually kind of it will have a flat bottom, and it was used to tamp the soil down. We had to put a base under the farm, and we had to clear away all the foliage and stuff, and then they added dirt and we tamped it down to make a base for it. So that's what she's building. She's building one of those. So here, this is what they built. This thing here that they were tamping down. So there's Joseph and one of his workers, and you can see the columns here on the left. You can see the tractor in the background.
Do they make their own bricks?
They make their own bricks, yes. Well, these bricks were bought. The workmen didn't make them there on the spot, but the Ugandans in the area, yes, they make lots of bricks. Interesting thing, I had heard that they had tractors on the farm, and I'd heard that they had a Kubota. That Kubota tractor is almost identical to the Kubota tractor we have on our farm, which is really amazing. So there you see the columns, and then we had
orange.
Yes, it's orange, yes. And so we hauled in this gravel, and then we were tamping it down, and they're putting kind of this soupy cement on it so that so it will just set all in. And I got to drive the Kubota, which was really a lot of fun. I mean, I felt right at home. I got up and I thought, man, I feel like I'm on my own farm. The only thing different was on the bucket controls. On theirs, it's down is down and up is up. On ours, it's just the opposite. So I'm loading rock and I'm thinking, no, Mary, remember, down is down, up is up. And I would dump it when I didn't want to. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get this down. But anyway, the three workmen, when they first started doing this rock that they wanted to put for that base layer, they just had their wheelbarrow and their shovels, and they would load it up with their shovel, and then one of them would take it across the little plank that they had across the mud, and they were doing it one wheelbarrow at a time. And I'm like going, and I said to Alan, the farm manager, I said, Alan, I mean, couldn't we do that easier with the tractor and the bucket? And he goes, yeah, that's a good idea. So he went and got the tractor, and he said, yeah, bring it over. And so I got on it, and these guys are looking at me because they had never seen a woman drive a tractor before. And so I went over and I loaded up the first load, and they're just like, I was like, well, where do you want it dumped? So it's like, so I go and I dump it, and they're like, you know, like, this is like 7 wheelbarrowfuls of rock, you know? So I went back and we got that base thing done in a day. It would have taken them 3 days to do it. So they're like, way to go. So that was a lot of fun. Here's the finished barn. You can see the pillars that they were building. Yeah, up off the ground, the goats go up the ramp, and they'll probably put a gate at the top so that they can lock them in for the night, and they'll be protected from whatever animals. And this didn't actually get done while I was there. They got as far as putting the roof on and some of the siding by the time I left. So this was taken like 3 or 4 days after I left.
So is the ground level solid?
Yeah, underneath, you can't see the rock anymore because it's covered with the kind of soupy cement. Yeah, and the flooring in this barn has slats that have gaps in them so that when the droppings from the goats, it doesn't stay on the floor, it drops down underneath. And Tucker had wanted this part underneath the barn so that they could actually gather all of the manure and things and use it for other parts of the farm. Because it's not just goats they have on this farm. Probably some of the other pictures. Yeah, here's cabbage that they grew on the farm. And this cabbage is being sold to this woman on the left here. And notice in the background how they're loading it on the motorcycle. It's amazing how many things.
Do they have an overweight permit?
No, they don't. It's amazing the things that they haul on their motorcycles. And even driving down the road, I mean, they will haul planks on the motorcycles, and you just kind of, you know, drive around them and carefully. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That building in the back is actually the church that's on the farm. Just a crude building, but on the inside they put up banners, they put up cloth around the walls, so it's really festive and pretty.
And Mary, you said like there's gaps, but because goats are so sure-footed, they don't have to worry about them.
They don't mind at all. Well, and they don't make the gaps big enough for their feet
Or
to
their
go
foot
through.
to get through.
Yeah.
Okay.
In most cases, yeah. Okay, and this is also on the farm. There are kids or young men in the neighborhood that come out on Saturday night especially, and they'll just start playing soccer on the farm. And these kids are not necessarily churched, mostly not churched, or not going to the CSI schools. And so they saw this as an opportunity for outreach for these kids. And so they have, a couple of the pastors are actually pretty good at soccer themselves. They start coaching these kids, and on Saturday nights they'll have kind of an informal game. Well, when these guys first start coming on Saturdays, they know that they have to work for 10 minutes or so before they can play soccer. And so what they have them do is they have them clear a field, because they're actually going to build a soccer field for these guys to play on.
Sweet.
And they're using it as outreach. And when we were there, probably the last Saturday or something when they were there, they had actually invited these guys to the town, Luero, to come and meet on their kind of city park soccer field there. And what they didn't tell them was that they were going to give them jerseys and cleats and outfit them and have a formal CSI soccer team. So it was just thrilling. I took lots of pictures of that too. It was fun to see them. And just here's these kids from who knows where, a shack. They may or may not have a mom or dad. They don't necessarily know the Lord, and someone's investing in them and reaching out to them and coming alongside them. I mean, they are all ears. Yeah, it's really cool ministry. This is one of the rice fields at the farm, and this is one of the pastors. She's actually a school teacher at the Luero school. She's kind of like the principal administrator. And if you look closely in the back of the picture, you'll see kind of a black head back there, a couple of black heads. Well, during the day, they hire people to go through the rice fields and to make a lot of noise and to keep the birds away. So there's always shouting and, you know, clanking of metal or whatever you could hear out there in the rice field during the day. So this is not our goat. This is not our farm. This was on a goat dairy out of Kampala away. We had gone one afternoon to see about their goats and see about if we could buy goats from them to start our dairy at the farm. And I was hoping to see them milk, and they said, well, we only milk once a day, and that's at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we were there in the afternoon, so it's like, how did we not time this right? Lord, I'm just frustrated. But anyway, we got to come back the next morning. The three of us got to come back next morning at 8 o'clock, and so I took pictures of him milking. And it's real interesting. He would let the herd out, and then he would pick out the ones he was going to milk, and he picked out 6 of them, one at a time. And they have stakes in the ground, just a wooden stake about this big in diameter, pounded into the ground, and it's got a little rope around it with a slip knot on the end of it. And he would go through the herd, and he would pick out the doe that he wanted to milk, and he would grab her by the front leg, and she would hop over, and he would put the slip knot around her ankle, and then he would go and pick the next one. And when he got his 6 picked, then he put the rest of the herd away. And the goats knew that as soon as they were tied up that they were going to get milked, and they'd just lay down or wait for him or whatever, and then he'd go around and he'd milk each one. So it was very interesting how he did that. These Ugandan dairy goats don't give milk in the volume like American dairy goats do. So he milked 6 of them, and he got about 2 liters, which is about half a gallon. I could milk my 2 goats once a day, which I actually milk them twice a day, so this would be half of their volume. So I would milk them once a day, and I would get as much as he did. Well, actually, I'd get twice as much as he did from 2 goats. So, yeah, maybe God didn't let me get goats while I was there because I'd be too disappointed, like, is that all?
So what's in his pan there?
It's an udder balm and also just some wash water. So he would take the water and he would wash off their udder a little bit, and then he'd squirt a few squirts out, and then he'd milk into that green container.
Maybe those are sort of hardy type goats that are adapted to that environment that maybe are
Absolutely.
more bred up stock
Right,
wouldn't do so well then.
right, yeah, and I've dreamed of sending one of my goats over there,
Yeah.
but you're exactly right. And Dr. Val, who's been here sharing before, she's a veterinarian in northern Uganda, and I had talked a lot to her before going, and she said, yeah, Mary, you'll be disappointed that their production is low, but you can't really bring a goat from the United States because it would get a disease and die. You have to use what you have there. So, I'm just thinking that God will get us started with goats over there, and we'll just refine them and breed them for production, and that will be what it is. And it might be milk for the schools, or it actually might be kind of a small business for people. We'll start selling the younger goats to people to have milk goats for their own family or their own neighborhood or whatever. Who knows what God wants to do with it? It's God's project. It's not my project. So yeah, that's a really good point, Dan.
I wonder why, though, that they have such small volume as far as their production.
Maybe not as sanitary conditions. So there's probably a lot of reasons for that. Other questions?
That might be a point, Mary. I know talking to the ranchers, how important.
That could be a challenge down the road, not sure. This was in the church, and you can see the bright banners around the side, and I'm thinking this was in the farm church. We were at a different church every Sunday, but these were two of the children, and the children are so delightful. I mean, they just want to be around you, they want to touch you, they want to practice what little English they know with you. But anyway, and they're always delighted to wear my hat. They're always like, hey, let me wear it. No, let me wear it. Yeah, they're just precious. Yeah, and this is in the church. On the left is Alan, the farm manager. He was helping with worship. And then on the right was Pastor Prudence.
He's got a dirt floor, huh?
A lot of the churches just have dirt floor, yeah, and you can just see how simple it is,
Yeah.
And then they put up the bright colors to fancy it up for the morning or whatever. And sometimes they open up the wooden windows. I mean, there's not real windows, there's not glass windows, it's just a covering for the opening, let the light in and let us praise together. Christ Sanctuary International Ministries, Luero District. Luero was the town that was closest to the farm. And you would start here. The school is behind that building on the left. But the start of the farm road was there, and we'd go down the road, and it's probably less than a mile long, but it takes maybe 15 minutes to get down the road because it's so full of potholes and dips and everything ugly. So there on the left is Alan, the farm manager, and then you see me on the right, and Dallas and Billy, and then the other gal was from the United States when she was visiting for a while. And then you see the children there, of course. But on the sign you see CSI Church, CSI Mixed Farm, CSI Kindergarten, CSI Prayer and Retreat Center, CSI Camping Site, and then they have the church program and everything. So this is information for people who are driving by on that road. Lots of bikes. On the right you see a bike going by, and they pack all sorts of things on their bikes. They hire themselves to be kind of taxi drivers for people who need to go places. People by and large don't own their own vehicle, because there's this public transportation. You can go on a motorcycle, which is called a boda, or you can go on a bike, or you can hire a driver to drive you in a car. So we had drivers that would drive us around places, and mostly they were CSI people who were involved in CSI and just really special people.
What's that overnight prayer?
The prayer and retreat center.
Huh?
Here's at one of the schools. And all the children in their uniforms, and just out playing. I think Dallas was doing games in this picture with them, and yeah, they're just so friendly and accommodating. And normally we would eat lunch at the schools, and they serve lunch for all the kids. And
What sort of thing do they serve?
Beans and rice, typically.
And they raise their own rice.
They were in there, yeah. And it's the season for the beans, so we were eating fresh beans, not dried ones that had been reconstituted. They were really very tasty and nutritious.
Did they do brown rice or did they do white rice?
I think it's mostly a white rice type, maybe a mixture. Yeah. A natural rice, and I don't think they ship it in from the United States and a local rice. Yeah. They also do a lot of plantain bananas, which are the bigger bananas, and they're not sweet, and so they would bake them and mash them, and they're like a potato. They would do that a lot.
But a lot healthier probably than a potato.
Yeah, maybe so. Well, and they also had Irish potatoes, what they called Irish potatoes, which are kind of like our potatoes. And they did lots of fruits, mangoes, pineapples, and avocados. They have wonderful avocados. They have a lot of watermelon, but it's really disappointing because we have Hermiston watermelon. Their watermelon looks beautiful, but it is so bland. It's disappointing. I got to the point where I wouldn't eat it because I was always disappointed. It's one thing they don't do well.
Well, that's a lot of
They
carbohydrates.
started, well, at least where they were feeding us in the guest houses, they would start feeding us some cooked cabbage. We're like, oh, there's more cabbage, and we'd clean up all the cabbage. And they would always bring it to us. And we actually got a cabbage from the farm. We said, can we just have a cabbage? And they're like, yeah, do you want us to cook it for you? And we're like, no. And they're like, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, we're going to eat it. Raw? Normally they don't eat things raw because the water that you wash it with might have germs in it. So how are you going to get it clean without cooking it?
Oh.
So, of course, they don't have irrigation on the farm because it's rain that waters everything. So you'd think that the rain would be fairly clean. So we didn't wash our cabbage. We just took off the outer leaves and then we chopped it and we ate it in our guest room in the evening. And they're like, "Does it taste good?" And we're like, "Yes, we love it." So that was good. I have to tell you a funny thing. When I got home, it was just after midnight in the wee hours of July 4th. And of course, our hours are just the opposite. So for me, I was wide awake. And Arvid was already asleep, and our youngest daughter had come to visit, and I said, "Oh, I can visit with you." She goes, "Mom, I've been working all day, and then I drove 4.5 hours to get here. I would kind of like to go to bed." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So she went to bed, and I'm like, I am so awake. Well, I could start unpacking. So I unpacked a little, and I thought, you know what? I am so hungry, and I bet there's a salad in the refrigerator. Opened the refrigerator, there's this big bag of raw spinach, and I'm like, oh, that sounds wonderful. So I put some on a plate and some dressing, and I eat it, and I'm like, oh, that tasted so good. I've got to have some more. So I had another helping, and then I thought, I think I'm just going to finish it off. So I finished it off. And then I thought, the other thing that sounds really good that they don't have in Uganda by and large is cheese. So I got out the block of cheese, and I'm heating it up in the microwave, and I am just having a great time eating cheese. And finally I got full, and I thought, okay, this is good. Well, I come to find out when I was talking to Billy later, I said, yeah, how'd you do coming back? And she goes, oh, you know, I just kind of went to bed, but then in the morning I went to the grocery store and I bought some spinach. Oh, really? She goes, oh, it tasted so good. I was laughing, and she goes, oh, and cheese. So when we were in Kenya, just before we came home, we had bought a block of cheese for our trip back on the plane, and she said, you know what, I'd just like to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Well, she never got to it when we were in Kenya, and we ate the cheese on the way back. So when she was at home and she had eaten the spinach, she thought, I'm going to have that grilled cheese sandwich. So she got out the cheese and some bread, and she had a grilled cheese sandwich.
That's funny.
So yeah, we did miss a few things over there. Okay, that's the last picture. So questions?
Hills, every once in a while, there'll be the place where they're making their handmade bricks and they're firing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I wonder if they farm the anthills. I mean, you could.
Well, oh yeah, after we're
Well, I mean, that's good soil.
Cultivate the
Yeah.
hills so that they can make bricks.
Yeah, they have one side full of anthills.
Yeah, I don't know, I think they look like they just let the ants go, they're pretty good at just letting ants be ants until they want that for bricks.
Right, yeah, and there's
Right.
lots and lots of anthills.
Yeah, there's probably.
And you know, when we first got there, we're like, so what is that mound of stuff? Oh, that's an anthill. And you know, we would think, oh, well, don't you wanna get rid of those? And they didn't seem concerned at all.
They actually lay their laundry. They, around the houses, they're just one room house with no window, no door, maybe a curtain. But then there'll be an anthill like near the house and they'll lay their laundry on it. And I'm thinking, then they have to shake it off, but they lay their laundry all around, you know, just, that was, it doesn't have to be a clothesline, you know.
On the dirt?
Yeah, just on the anthill and on the bush, on a wherever.
The
And
anthills are probably less dusty.
I
I
don't know that you got ants on your phone. It didn't make any sense to me, but I noticed it.
Wow, right,
Yeah.
yeah. Juanita.
You know, biggest city. It's in a Muslim suburb, and they have to have fences around everything. They have to gates and bars, and so the school is enclosed with a big fence, and there's a gate where the boar's hole is, and at night they open that and they let the village people come in. But they said if they left it open all the time, it would be vandalized. They have to have someone that's there. They open the gate, and then there's an attendant there while the surrounding homes get their water. In the town where the farm has its own bore's hole, and so it's a pump, you know, where they can get water by the church and by the house where they're building a guest house kind of, or a house there. Then there's also in the little town where the school is, there's a couple of them. But what Mary saw, you saw about 75 people lined up in a line to get their water from the well, just that one, you know, and they would put their bucket, their big jug down, and then go do something, or 3 or 4, yeah, they didn't just bring one. And then when it was, go do something, and kind of, people would move it along, and when it was your turn, they would call you to come and get your water. So, I mean, just, we don't think about, like, it just reminded me of the woman at the well who came at noon to get water, you know, to meet Jesus. But they're getting water sometimes all during the day just to avoid the lines of time, at least at that one. But they all have a bore's hole for each of the schools. Yeah.
I just saw this morning that Carolyn put on a fundraiser for clean water. She's got it on there, so if anybody wanted to.
Well, I was just wondering why they didn't want you guys to drink it. Is the water that comes from the aquifer that they're getting not?
It could have parasites.
Yeah, and they're used to it.
Yeah,
So
it
they're
could
fine.
have bacteria or parasites. It should be boiled or filtered in some way, and so that's why we didn't drink it. It'd be like Mexico.
Yeah, because you're not used to it.
We're not used to it, yeah.
I'm
What Carol is doing, just 1 minute, she's getting water storage, she's getting a big water storage things so that they can collect rainwater, because it rains every day, I think, so they can collect the rainwater and have another source of water for each of the schools. Yes.
I was gonna make the comment that even here in the United States, I travel a lot
Uh-huh.
and I drink bottled water because it will affect my system going someplace else and drinking water that's different than what I'm used to.
Even though it's pure, yeah, it's got different things in it, yeah.
It has different minerals, different.
The biggest persecution comes from the Satanists, from the witch doctors. Like in the town where the farm, where there's a school and a farm, you know, down the road, there are 2 witch doctors on that road to the farm, and the witch doctor's children go to the school. Yeah, and you know, they just treat it as they pray. They're not not afraid. You know, they're not afraid. They're not like, we're gonna get rid of the witch doctor. They're just gonna pray him into the kingdom. That's how they handle. Just like the Muslims, they're not worried about the Muslims, the Muslim teachers. If you are a Muslim teacher and you come and want to teach in that school, you can, because they're not worried about him. They're going to hear Jesus, and they're going to be. Eventually, they're going to come to know him. That's what the view is there. So, but as far as persecution, no. There, and you know, I didn't see other than. Yes, but you know what? In that town where the school was, this is the way the persecution would go. The farm was there, and when they had to sell out all the goats and the cattle because of the disease that they were getting, and God said, sell them, get rid of them. The village people laughed and said, ha ha ha, we knew you were, you know, they couldn't make it, that was failure. They called it failure, and they spoke. So the talk in the village was, they failed, those Christians have failed. And so what, you know, Tucker just keeps going. He says, no, God has not failed. We heard what God said. Now he got rid of that so that he could do something bigger and better, which is the milk goats. And so, and I think when you showed him the picture of the palace, our goat palace, our barn.
Yes.
I don't think in all of East Africa, or probably all of Africa, will you ever see a goat house
Like
built
that.
on brick pillars like that. I just don't think there's one like that. They're all on poles, and the termites begin eating them, and so they're really rickety. They just do not, you know, you can't even imagine after about 7 years you're gonna have to build another one. And that's why Tucker said, no, we're gonna build it to last. But see, even that makes a statement to the people in the village. And then on the farm, they're playing. Did Mary tell you about? Did you know about soccer?
Yes.
Yeah. So they're having these orphan kids come out and play soccer. They see the goat thing go up. They know, and they are made to do chores and then play soccer. You know, those kids. And then they're starting a vocational school, and they want to get those sponsors so that those older children will be able to go to the vocational school and learn a trade. And so that's also happening in that village. And while the day we were there, and they were having a soccer game, and for the first time, they brought coaches from Kampala and uniforms for the kids to put on in practice for the big day after we left, the big game. The village people were coming to Tucker, thanking him for what he was doing for their village, thanking him for this bringing hope. You know, now these kids that would just be doing nothing, well, really, they'd probably be getting into drugs and, you know, crime, are now focused on something work and sports and something good in their life. Yeah.
With regards to the goats, Mary?
Yeah.
I see a lot of lush green around. Would that be what the goats would eat during the day, and is it all fenced in, or?
It's not fenced in. They would have a person watching over them, a goat herd.
Okay.
A goat herd.
Because there's wild animals probably having to eat them.
Especially in the evening. We didn't see them during the day, but yeah. And just all through Uganda, you just don't see animals